mainly because if it's during this year, if it's, we have sometimes civil society organizations, they do themselves some kind of work which is not in the agenda of the politicians. So that might be a little bit harder to work and to give examples to the government that it's not in our agenda. So it's more like what's its current situation of involvement, let's say, IPA countries, what their needs, what are so many laws and regulations need to be, let's say, reform of any part of the law. So currently, that would be good to take into consideration what is the current situation on that specific area. So sometimes that is conjunction with political agenda. Well, obviously from one training, it cannot everything be discussed for 2 days. There are so many issues, so there are so many complex issues. But we try to at least to tackle the problem with some tools, with some mechanisms in order so that to understand in our context how we could involve ourselves in relation to all the, because we in the beginning we put our perspectives into place, so that from that we will obviously each of those components could be a specific training. Well, we are discussing general in policies. Let's say that could be affected by international let's say institutions let's say in economics, in taxes, and reduction of taxes. That doesn't necessarily mean a certain law. So agenda setting is more like being in agenda with this year's agenda, let's say at national level and local level. Let's say strategic planning of local municipalities. So more or less in
context.
Yeah, in context of the policy. Let's say agenda could be a part of that comes from civil society. Agendas are, let's say, basically philosophically, let's say, saying that it should be a part of the current problems that need to be solved, more or less. And that's taken into consideration. Factors can be initiatives can be from civil society, from local, central government, but international, especially in our area, that from European institutions, agendas are then kind of transferred to local political agendas as well. So that needs some involvement as well. So that we are not discussing who, but actually in that agenda, as much as you are involved in that agenda, which is let's say at this time for every country, that involvement is more than that plays for credibility as well. Okay, at this time, political credibility, and also professional, but especially political credibility when it's in coherence with the main agenda or priorities. But that could be influenced by civil society as well. Let's say, how could municipalities and could be involved, let's say, well, taken into consideration, we are talking about the context of participatory governance. Civil society organizations, how could they participate in terms of some areas, let's say in planning, budget planning, and also in strategic planning as well, because mainly municipalities have their own strategies. Even their departments have their own strategies, like say for urbanism and planning. So they are not specific like tools. We cannot say that they are tools, but ways, let's say, which incorporate many ways of participation. Let's say in participatory economics, just as a context that, let's say, network of business association, even that, which is, most of them are, well, organized as a civil society organizations, although they express their interest with, let's say, local taxes, let's say. And then they could be a participatory part, let's say, in drafting the policies of municipalities, where they are drafted for the next upcoming year, right, at the end of the year, that they could help some, all these mechanisms of institutional mechanisms could be incorporated, but also civil society could do that, not necessarily directly discussing with government as well. let's say, indirectly with citizens. But then in participatory, that could be used, let's say evidence-based. How we can take evidence, let's say that a certain tax is not good to be applicable in one municipality, let's say in Belgrade here, which is affecting quite local businesses significantly, and will short decrease in tax might benefit the community in some other areas. So at that place, through participatory, at least now we certainly CSOs need to have some capacities as well. So that it's not that we have to do that, but some evidence needs to be taken into consideration. But that could evidence or within the government as well. So that could be used from that perspective. So information could be taken from many parts. But when taking evidence, maybe just to add, it will be necessary for maybe the whole processes to take into consideration. When we take evidence, we need to take reliable evidence. Okay, so we just don't need which and where to get that from. So that's another consideration, because that can be misused, misunderstood, and fake processes could be, let's say, more or less. So reliable evidence, which is where we could find sources of information. There are some statistical, departments of central government within some. It depends from the issue, but that could be very helpful in that helping government in determining what kind of participatory, in order to affect the economy overall. So that's the context. But that could be budget, let's say, is interrelated as well. They are not just separated like pigs. Let's say in participatory budgeting, that helps as well in the economy. So they are interrelated. How that civil society or organization can cooperate, can be a participatory part, is within regulations that in every democratic country, municipality they are obliged more or less by law to incorporate civil society organizations. And where they do budgetary planning, discussion in municipality assemblies, that could be a part in that influence in discussion budgeting for upcoming year, which still affects economics on a certain level, right? With this participatory approach.
This is to promote this participatory approach and to include actually the needs of different people. On the other side, which I think that it's a missing point in all of our government at national and local level, is that kind of decision-making processes based on cost-effective and cost-benefit analysis. So this is something which is very, very important, because if we are talking about the cost, social and cost-benefit analysis, we actually need, in terms to have like evidence-based policy making, to do the proper poverty assessment analysis, impact assessment analysis, sorry, and to have before, like a prior, we decide about some measures, to have some calculations how much one measure will cost and how much benefit, social benefit, actually they will bring to the society. And this is really like a lacking of capacity in Serbia, in other countries in the region also, because I know that we sometimes try to find the outside experts, and it is a missing point, because you need to have an expert who has expertise in this economic part, but also expertise in, for example, education or the social protection and some specific areas, and to have like a good team of people who can combine all of this. Specifically, one example of that is now, for example, in Serbia, when they cut the number of employees in public services. So this is how the decision-making is not very responsible, because we had like a pressure from outside that you need to cut the budget and that kind of stuff. And so our government just decided that it is the easiest way, and this is really like a popular way to cut the number of people who are employed in the public administration, in ministries and everything else. So maybe that's absolutely correct decision, you know. But on the other side, they didn't do that based on any evidence. That was really like a just political decision. What that means that at the end, it might happen, for example, that you cut the number of the people in the public administration and cut the budget, and that's fine. But mostly, those are people who are just like a few years before retirement, or maybe they are generally in a bad position as a family in financial matter, or whatever. It might happen that some of those people just go on the material allowance, for example, so that you will have additional resources that you need to cover that kind of jeopardized people. On one side, you will cut the finances. On the other side, you will increase finances. That's just an example, you know, because they didn't do that evidence-based, and they didn't have any analysis prior to the decision. They might create the biggest problem. It is not worth to mention some sociological and psychological, you know, circumstances and influences of that kind of decision. So in terms of that, this is economic aspects, it is really important, and from civil society point of view, I think to be aware that this is something that we need capacity, and this is something that you need to raise awareness with decision makers at the local and national level, that this is a kind of responsible decision making, that you can't be like, okay, this measure will be like this policy will be like this, without any evidence beyond that. So in addition to all of this economic aspect in generally, this is something that we can influence. It's a great tool for politicians who decide about something, that to really have the evidence why they decided about one or the other measure. Sometimes it is not, the whole story is to find the most effects for the smaller amount of money or finances. But it is not always the situation that you will go with the cheapest options. So you have to find the real impact related to like a social benefit and economical. Yeah. We had another example in Serbia in the health area. Again, maybe the measure is completely perfect, but our Ministry of Health just decided, for example, to have some kind of additional health services after in the evening, after the regular time of the hospitals. So they organized kind of parallel work with the private health services, but not in the hospital in the evening, and they will paid for that services, but it will be less than in private sector. So it was a huge discussion about this. Everybody was mad. Like people in vulnerable groups said, like, okay, that will be ruin our position again, because corruption will be increased, you know. So because everybody will say, like, okay, come tonight, then they can pay for that and that kind of stuff. More doctors from the private practice were mad also, and everybody was, you know. Maybe an argumentation from the ministry sounds okay, pretty much.